Welcome to Inside Marketing with Market Surge, your front row seat to the boldest ideas and smartest strategies in the marketing game. Your host is Reed Hansen, Chief Growth Officer at Market Surge.
Hello and welcome back to Inside Marketing with Market Surge. I'm your host, Reed Hansen, and today I'm thrilled to be joined by Ashlee Nelson, founder and event strategist at Curated by Ashlee. Ashlee specializes in designing guest-first experiences for masterminds, executive retreats, trainings, and high-level corporate gatherings. With freakish attention to detail, she helps coaches, entrepreneurs, and brands create unforgettable moments that turn attendees into raving fans, while freeing her clients to stay focused on leading the room, not just running the schedule. Ashlee, we're so glad to have you here. Thanks for joining.
Thank you so much. I'm honored to be here.
So you often say that you start event design with the feeling, not the checklist. What would you say are some key questions you'll ask a client to nail down the emotional outcome you're trying to get?
That's such a great question. I really think it all depends on my client's goals. And oftentimes, a lot of people don't necessarily know what those are. They just know they want to have an event and they need to hire a planner to help get the logistics done. So I like to help them focus in on that. Who's that one person you're planning for? Who is that one person in the room that you want to make sure that they leave and they do X, Y, Z? So I really try to just take a step back with all of my clients and make sure that their event, that, hiring me and all the planning we're going to do is really catered to a specific goal and a specific person.
That's fantastic. And maybe just as to go down a tangent a little bit, I think a lot of business owners or those that are participating in events maybe don't understand, how to quantify the value that in-person events can generate for their brand, or how to optimize them to do that. What are some of the metrics that you use to measure that effectiveness?
So there's a lot of different ways you can skin the cat. I tend to focus on three. So there's ROI,
Mhm.
dollars, dollars. Am I spending this? Am I getting this out of it? Just your general return on investment. I think a lot of people plan their events that way because it's important. You want to make sure you're not throwing all your money away for no reason. But then there's two other components that I focus on: ROO and ROE. ROO is return on objective. So does the event do and accomplish what we set out for it to accomplish? And sometimes that's not always dollars. It's brand awareness. It is followers. It's likes. It's a certain or promoting a certain thing on social media. So ROO, return on objectives, is another really, really, really smart goal that I like to make sure my clients have some sort of return on. And then there's ROE, which is my favorite. That's the return on experience. And this is really, really guest focused. That's why I like it so much. And that is, do your attendees or your guests, are they getting transformed at the end of it? If you take them on a bourbon tour in Louisville, what is that experience? What's that return on experience? Are they going to then, make business deals at that dinner? What is that aspect? What is that outcome of what you want your guests to experience? So those are the three that I focus on. And sometimes some events need more. One, you want to make sure you focus on ROO more, ROO most. Some of them it's ROI, but I think all of them have a place at all events.
That's fantastic. And as you said, it's not always a direct correlation straight to sales dollars. Sometimes it is, an additional high quality touch point that helps them along a long-term sales cycle or helps persuade them in a way that was unique to being in person. So I noticed on your website, you use the term guest first and guest first events. What would you say that really means in actuality? Like, how do you make that happen? And what would be an example of a guest first event that you've planned, and what was the impact?
Sure. So when I say guest first, I think a lot of planners, and I don't want to underscore this, logistics are so important. You want to make sure that everything is dialed in and locked in. But I think a lot of planners, and honestly, a lot of people in general, they stop there. They stop after they check the boxes. When I say guest first, it is not just checking a box, it's anticipating needs. It is making sure that your guest feels cared for. It's making sure there's hospitality throughout the event. And so specifically, and I think this is really easy to do for the smaller, the mastermind, the curated retreats under 20, when you can design custom care packages for your one guest who you know is gluten-free, and it's this very beautiful gluten-free care package that's on her bed. So it really does take an event, and it takes the hospitality one step further, and you're anticipating those needs. And even for larger events, we've this can be really successful. It's the idea of maybe giving coffee tokens to each one of your guests because you know that they're leaving their hotel and they're going to book it over to your event, and they open up and they see this coffee token for a coffee on us at a local coffee shop. So I think it's just going an extra step to really make sure that experience, and to really make sure, like I said earlier, you're planning for your guests, you're anticipating their needs, and you're making their experience as hospitable as possible. Because let's face it, events are expensive. People pay a lot of money sometimes to go to these retreats and these mastermind groups. You just want to make sure that at the end of that event, they say that was worth every penny and more. So they bring more people next time.
Yeah, and you brought up masterminds, and a lot of the members of our audience, there's coaches or people that are both practitioners and coaches or have a course of some sort, and masterminds are a great tool for them to create engagement and whatnot. These and I guess what I'm trying to get at is there's definitely a lot of specialization in planning those kinds of events, but you also plan conferences as well. Can you talk a little bit about how your approach shifts for high touch events like masterminds and retreats versus maybe mass events like conferences where they're interacting with hundreds of people? How do you make those effective, or what are your techniques for making both effective?
So I actually use the same techniques for both of them,
Okay.
but I for the smaller mastermind groups, when you're really able to dial in and get very, very experiential, that's my sweet spot, because that's when you're booking the bourbon tastings, that's when you're doing the yacht cruise, that's when you're doing the hikes through Zion National Park. Because it's a lot easier to do that if you have 20 people going to this mastermind. But I really am designing for the same end goal in mind for large events or for small events. It's how do you want your guests to leave at the end of the mastermind or at the end of the large conference? And so masterminds, it's great. You want them to leave typically refreshed. You want them to leave transformed. You want them to leave with new information. And so I'm making sure that based on my clients' goals, that every goal is weaved into a thread of the whole entire event. And then for larger conferences, I still think it is the same end goal. You want it to be experiential, you want it to be amazing, but instead you are kind of combating a few problems. So at a lot of larger conferences, there's a ton of burnout, because I think half the time people go to an event and it's speaker number one, speaker number two, lecture, speaker number three, or lunch, speaker number three, speaker number four. There's not a lot of white space. And so it's planning these, especially for the larger events, to make sure we are measuring or to make sure we are remedying burnout, to make sure there's plenty of snacks, to make sure there's plenty of opportunities for connection, because I think that is what a lot of larger events get wrong. And I think that's where masterminds excel, because you can have one-on easily at a mastermind. At a large conference, not so much. And I think a lot of people can get lost in the crowd. So it's all about cultivating and curating, for lack of better words, that welcome at the larger conferences, and making sure people leave refreshed and energized, and making sure that they leave connected and not just overwhelmed.
That's really cool. And I'm glad to hear that. I guess I'd hate to hear you say like, well, I just bring in more equipment or more, like we just print out more flyers, but I'm glad
Right.
that you're able to make that still a very high quality interaction in both situations. Planning events, it's not a job for me. I just don't, I'm a bit introverted. I'm also kind of, I get overwhelmed by like so many things happening at the same time, and just kind of exhausts me. And so, kudos to you for being in that mindset and having those skills. But so I'm curious, you run these high touch events,
Mhm.
but what are those tools that you use to manage those? And is technology a part of this? Do you have like automated tools that help speed up things, or help make your life easier, or are you pretty manual and like using pen and paper and the like?
Yeah, great question. And this is probably not the answer you were hoping for. I I have a ton of templates that I have built out and perfected, over the last however many years. A lot of budgeting templates for specific venues, for specific locations. So I really do get into the weeds with all the different templates and tools that I use when I'm planning. But really, my secret sauce and what just honestly is, well, two things. I don't take every single client that reaches out to me. I just can't, because I do in experience, I guarantee a certain NPS score at the end of all of my events. And I can't do that if I'm taking just every single event that comes my way. So I really do specialize, and I really do. I don't take every client. I would love to, maybe if I grow, but right now I really do make sure that if I'm giving or if someone is paying me money, I'm giving them 100%, and I'm doing that to the best of my ability. So that's one way, is I just don't take everyone, because I just don't have that capacity. Um, and then the second thing is, my vendors, my venues, the different partnerships I have with people in the industry, they make me look good, quite frankly. So I partner with some really awesome people, some really awesome venues, and I just use them time and time again because they're awesome. They have the same goals that I do. They really want to make sure that guests leave change, that guests have an amazing time. So it's a mix of technology. I obviously have my spreadsheets, and I have some tech that I use to do like meeting software, where I'm designing tablescapes and I'm designing room layouts, like the techie stuff. I do have some of that, but it really does come down to people. I think that's why I love this industry so much. It's my vendors, and then I just don't take every client.
Well, that's great advice, and I think whether it's, um, managing, being realistic with your capacity, or, qualifying and disqualifying certain customers, I think that's a good practice that businesses should do, is deliver work to the quality that you're turning away business. I think is always something to aspire to, unless you're selling something that you deliver and never have to see them again. But well, so a part of events, is generating some memories, some razzle dazzle, some wow moments. Can you talk about some examples of surprises, or wow moments that really pop or stand out in your memory, that drove some real great experiences?
Absolutely. So I really think I've actually, now there's so much stuff swimming in my head. So one of my favorite, I'm a huge foodie. Like, I love
Mm.
food. I love to experience just different cuisines in different places. And, you go to a conference, and it's just kind of like the normal hotel ballroom, like the beige, the bland, the gross coffee and the tea that
Mhm.
tastes like gross coffee.
Mhm.
I when I am planning, well, when I do this, when I'm planning, is I love to bring in fun food experiences, whether that's a chef that I found at the last minute on talentacquisition.com that we bring in to do this really interesting lunch, or whether that's just really amazing regional food. I love doing that, because I really do think, like, if you're paying a ton of money for all these events, the food is not a place you want to cut costs on. It's just not. And so I love finding awesome chefs, celebrity chefs, doing cool food activations. So that's one way that I really love to make events special, and really just make sure I'm targeting that hospitality. Another thing that I love to do is, and I do this for all the events I plan, but really rely on the culture. So for one event I have coming up, it's a mastermind retreat for professionals, entrepreneurs who own their own business, who own their own businesses, and have employees over like 20. And so we're doing this. We booked this amazing. I guess, for lack, it's not an Airbnb, but it's kind of like an Airbnb. They have a bunch of different houses that's overlooking Big Sur, which is this amazing national park in California. And the whole entire event is going to be, California theme. We're going to be doing an amazing hike through Big Sur. We got an amazing boat cruise that we're going to be doing. So I really like to tie in local culture, and I think that's a great way, and also sometimes a not expensive way, to really just amp up that surprise and delight, and to make sure that guests have an amazing time, and they do get to experience more than a hotel ballroom. You bring the culture inside of the hotel ballroom, or inside to the venue, is what I love to do.
That's awesome. Um, so one big topic I'm sure you've thought much about is, and we're a few years removed from this, but during the pandemic years, in-person events were pretty much shut down, and
Mhm.
a lot of them were canceled, but many of them shifted to online uh, equivalents, or some form of online, and I think just anecdotally, I'm an outsider, but I've observed that a lot of events or there's just like a huge prevalence of webinars. Where do you think the market for the in-person events is, and do you see it coming back gradually, or do you? And then I've got a follow up too. Is tell us about the need for in-person events in 2025 and beyond. Um, in light of we've got Zoom, we've got all this technology.
Mhm.
Where are we at today?
Absolutely. So I am, it is my belief that in person it's made a comeback, it's here to stay. And I really do think it can amplify business goals so much more than virtual events because I've seen it happen. I just quite frankly have seen it happen with my clients who, and COVID was a special time and place. I mean, we were forced to go virtual. But I think after that first, I would even say 8 months, like I don't even think it was a year. People experience extreme Zoom fatigue. And
Yeah.
I just, there's a time and a place for webinars and the pre-recorded webinars and all of those things. But I honestly see and this is why I don't really do virtual events because I just don't believe it all that much. But even in just how people receive information from online, there is a 10-minute, you have 10 minutes. That's how much time speakers have when it's virtual and people are zoning out, they're checking their phones. When you're at an in-person event, you have upwards of 40. And then you have to minute break, then you get 40 minutes again. But virtual events, it's 10 minutes, you take a break, it's 8 minutes, you take a break, and it goes down to like 3 minutes at the end of it. And I forget what book I was reading that had this information. It was a great research study that was done. So I really do believe, have your webinars, all of that, but don't rely on them. I really do think smart businesses, the biggest marketing tool, and honestly, their top revenue driver is those in-person events. People pay a lot of money for experiences. I think we're becoming experience economy. It's not so transactional anymore. And I just think larger events are here to stay. People develop whole entire cultures around in-person events like South by Southwest and Dreamforce and all of those events that are just awesome examples of what hosting an in-person event can look like for yourself, for your company, and for your clients.
Fantastic. Um, so how do you help businesses? So, they're putting on an in-person event and it's like a whole new operation. They're plenty busy with their day to day, and there are a lot of questions, decisions to be made around events. How do you help these businesses navigate this? Are you able to make decisions independently in most of these engagements, or are you able to coach them and give them a framework to help speed that up? Because I imagine just the decisions around a lot of these events can be overwhelming to a lot of businesses. How do you help them through that?
So I think that's why a lot of people hire me because they just don't want to make the decisions.
Mm.
A lot of clients are speakers and they are coaches and they just want to go to the front of that event room and just stay there the whole time and engage with their guests. And so when it comes to making decisions and doing all that, it really just comes down to trust. I have my clients' best interest at heart. I have their budget dollars at heart. So I think it just comes down to trust and communication. There's a lot of decisions that I do have the freedom to make, independently of my clients. I think as long as we understand each other, as long as we're hitting those budget numbers and honestly coming below them, then they're just like, do your thing. Like, you hire an expert plumber to go fix your bathtub. It's kind of the same when you hire an event professional. We know the industry, we have vendors, connections. And so I think it just comes down to making sure there's trust. And honestly, I update my clients a lot. I just do. I'm like, hey, we booked this venue. Here's the room layout. So I really do think it comes down to communication and just making sure I really do understand their objections or their objectives and that we have really concrete, clear goals. That way it's just fun the whole time. You're just picking venues, you're picking experiences. And I think a lot of times those are the fun decisions that my clients want to be part of. And then I'm handling like what kind of camera we're using and what kind of mic we're using and doing all of that logistic stuff that they kind of either don't care about or don't know that I'm doing behind the scenes just because it's so into the weeds.
Well, that's helpful, and I think that's a sign of a good partner that you're able to pull this off without making this a huge burden on the your your sponsor, excuse me. And so just last question, we're looking ahead in light of cultural changes and even like the advent of AI and all these different technologies we're starting to get used to. How do you see the meetings event space changing and or staying the same? What do you see as the future in the next 3 to 5 years for this space?
So I really do think, like I said earlier, in-person events are here to stay. I think with all this AI stuff and all this new technology, people really do crave connection.
Mm,
And a lot of brands, their biggest weapon really is going to be those in-person events because it's how your clients can see you face to face. It's how you can build trust because I think AI can just it's getting so impersonal. And
mm.
I think the opposite of that. So I see them increasing and I just even see them increasing on my own calendar. I think a lot of brands are realizing like, oh, my competitors are doing events. I probably should be doing events too. And so I do see them increasing. I think honestly, AI can make it can make me more effective. I personally it, but I don't rely on it because half the time I ask AI, hey, what about this venue? And it sends me a list of 20 venues and like 10 of them don't exist. So I that getting a little bit better, hopefully. But honestly, I really do think in person and connection and just making those connections or one-on-one can just is just the best thing ever. And I don't see that stopping.
Well, that's fantastic. Well, Ashley, if a business of any kind would like to have an awesome event and work with you and or consult with you, what would be the best way for them to find you?
You can find me on LinkedIn under Ashlee Nelson. Ashley spelled with two E's, Ashlee. And then my website, www.curatedbyashley.com. I'm also on Instagram at Curated by Ashlee. Basically, I'm everywhere.
Well, fantastic. I will include those links in the show notes and would definitely point anybody your way that is looking to create a great, memorable event. Thanks so much for joining us. Thanks so much for joining us today, Ashley.
Want to stay ahead of what's actually working in marketing right now? Head over to marketsurge.io and see how we're helping businesses grow smarter, faster, and louder. That's marketsurge.io, because your next breakthrough shouldn't be a guess.